The link between a mother and daughter was important to my stepmother. I said no to her for years. When she got pregnant, everything changed. When I was 6 years old, my mum died of cancer 17F. I remember her less and less, but I can still picture her sweet face and the way she would sing me to sleep every night. When she was a teacher, I loved going into her elementary school classroom after school. The walls were always covered with bright projects and artwork by her students. That my mum was the one that all the kids loved makes me proud even now. When she got sick, I wasn't really sure what was going on. Even though my 45-year-old dad, Tom, tried to keep me from the worst of it, I could tell something was wrong. Mom spent more and more time in the hospital. When she got home, she was too tired to sing or play music. The last clear memory I have of her is coloring with her while she was in the hospital. She told me that she would always be watching over me, even though I couldn't see her. It was just my dad and me for a long time after she died. He couldn't calm down. And now I can see how hard it was for him to keep it together for me. Like his mother. He would make pancakes every Sunday morning. But the sides would be a little brown. The last few times he tried to braid my hair for school, it wasn't going well. Even though we both missed our mother a lot, we worked through it together and tried to find a new normal. When I was 7, my dad met Carmen, 38F, at a support group for people who have lost a loved one. I remember the first thing he told me about her. We were in a park, sitting on my mom's favorite bench. He felt uncomfortable, as he talked about meeting a lovely woman who had lost her husband. He played with his wedding ring. At first I didn't mind. I thought it was possible that Dad had made a friend who understood how we felt. Things did happen pretty quickly, though. After a few months, Carmen started coming over for dinner every week. To make things more fun for me, she would rent movies or bring board games. But every time her mother was there, it looked like she was trying to take her place. She would drink coffee out of her mom's favorite mug and eat dinner in her chair. It might not seem like much, but to a 7-year-old who was still sad, it felt like being let down. Dad told me Carmen was moving in with us 6 months after they met. I lost it and screamed that he was trying to be my mum. Dad tried to make it clear that he wasn't going to replace anyone and was just trying to avoid being alone. However, all I could see was this stranger coming into our home, making changes, and trying to be my new mother. She would try to do my hair, go shopping with me, and ask me about my day all the time. I couldn't be open and honest with her, though. Every time she tried to be a mother, I would either shut her down or lash out. At the time, all I knew was that I didn't want another mother. Now I see that my actions were probably caused by fear and grief. I was 9 years old when my dad and Michelle got married. I said no to being a girl when they asked me to. I didn't even say I would go to the event. I stayed with my grandparents that day, and I think I cried the whole time. I thought I was messing with my mom's memories. Even though my grandparents tried to make me feel better by telling me that Mom would want Dad to be happy, I just couldn't see it that way. It looked like everyone was trying to forget about Mom. Carmen got pregnant soon after the wedding, which made things even more difficult. Ronald 7M, my half-brother, was born when I was 10 years old. For starters, I didn't want to deal with my stepmother. Plus, I had to deal with a half-sibling who seemed to represent everything I had lost. I still remember the day they took Ronald home from the hospital. The baby was adorable, Carmen looked beautiful. Dad couldn't stop smiling. I've never felt so alone. The different ways Carmen treated us became more clear as Ronald got older. She naturally loved Ronald and cared for him like a mother. She would play with him on the floor for hours and kiss him all the time. It was like she knew exactly what he needed. I felt like everything was forced and wrong. She seemed more like she was reading lines from a script when she tried to hug me or tell me she loved me than she was really feeling something. Better things have not gotten worse as I've aged. Carmen wants to act like a mother to me, even though it makes me feel weird. She insists on going to all of my school events and tries to give me tips on boyfriends and makeup. Last year, she even tried to plan a sweet 16 party for me, but I refused to go. I still remember a very embarrassing event that happened to me when I got my first period. Carmen wanted to talk to me and bought me tampons and pads to make it a fun time to get to know each other. But all I could think about was how this should have been a time to be with my real mother. I cried for hours in the bathroom after I locked myself there. In this case, my dad hasn't helped at all. He keeps telling me that Carmen is trying and that I should give her a chance. But I don't want or need another mother, and he doesn't seem to understand that. Even though my mom isn't here with us anymore, she is still my mom. I've tried to explain this to him several times, but he just brushes me off and tells me to move on and enjoy our new family. There is always stress in the house. It seems like every family meal is a walk through a restaurant. Carmen tries too hard to know everything about my day. Dad gives me mean looks if I don't answer with enough excitement. Having to deal with all of this, Ronald often acts out to get attention. It makes me tired. I'm going to my best friend Lily's house more and more these days. Her family is pretty chill and doesn't cause any trouble. There are times when I wish I could move there right away. Everything came to a head when Carmen tried to go with me to the prom dress shop last week. When I told her I was going out with Lily and some other friends, she got very angry and said she felt cheated that I hadn't let her join in on this mother-daughter adventure. When I finally lost it, I told her she was not my mother and never would be. After this fight, things have been bad. Ronald doesn't understand and is upset. Carmen is crying all the time, and my dad is mad at me. I'm mad that my feelings aren't being respected, but I also feel bad that I made Carmen sad. I do not know what to do. I know Carmen isn't mean, and I love my dad and Ronald. I can't keep acting like I don't mind this forced link, though. How can I set rules for my family without making things worse? Is it still wrong of me to not see Carmen as a mother figure after all these years? Today is the first update. Things have gotten worse since my last post about a month ago. After what happened with the prom dress, my dad pulled me away to have a serious talk. He knew I was still sad about my mother's death, but he told me it was time to move on and accept Carmen as my new mother. So Carmen would feel more like she was part of the family. He even told me to start calling her mom. This conversation shocked and upset me. It looked like my dad was trying to erase my mom's memory and put Carmen's in its place. He thought I would forget about my real mother, so I told him he was crazy, and that I would never call Carmen mom. This led to a heated argument. My father thinks I am selfish and ungrateful, because Carmen has done so much for me. He told me that she has tried to get to know me, been there for me at all of my school events, and always treated me like her own daughter. I told her that I hadn't asked for any of that and that Carmen's actions often seemed more like job than genuine care. After our fight, my dad put me on probation and took away my phone rights. He said he'd give them back to me when I learned how important my family is. During the next week, things at home were very stressed. There were times when Carmen tried to talk to me and told me she loved me like a daughter and only wanted us to be close. Most of the time, I stayed in my room to avoid these talks. One day, I was in my room and found an old picture album hidden in my closet. There were a lot of pictures of my mum and me in it. In the shots, she taught me how to ride a bike, and we baked cookies by the beach. A lot of little things I'd almost forgotten made me cry for hours as I thumbed through it. I quickly hid the album until Carmen knocked on my door and asked me to join her for dinner. I thought these were things I should keep to myself and not tell my new family about. Started acting in a strange way. He started having temper tantrums and refusing to go to school. I felt even worse about myself when I heard Carmen tell my dad that the way I was acting was making Ronald feel bad. When I got home from school one afternoon, Ronald was crying in his room. He told me that he didn't understand why I didn't feel the same way about Carmen as he did. I asked him what was wrong. Seeing as our moms are different, he asked if that meant I didn't love him either. It broke my heart. I tried to tell him how much I loved him. I did feel different things about Carmen, though. He didn't really get it, but he seemed to feel better after we played his favorite video game for a while. A lot of anger built up between Carmen and my dad when they talked about family therapy. My mom thought it would help us become a real family, and my dad was willing to try but worried. When they brought up the idea, I said no to their method. I told them they had to face the fact that no amount of therapy would change the fact that I saw Carmen as my mother. However, this led to yet another heated argument, with my dad threatening to never let me go outside again if I didn't go to counseling. I called my mom's parents because I was angry and stuck. I didn't tell them about the problems between Carmen and my dad because I feared they would be upset and because I loved my dad. But I thought I had no other choice at this point. When my grandparents found out what was going on, they were furious. When they called my dad right away, they got angry and talked for a long time. I could not hear everything. But I heard my grandfather tell my dad that by trying to make Carmen play Carmen, he was calling my mother's memory into question. After the call, my dad looked shook up. He let me go from being grounded and gave me back my phone, but we haven't really talked since then. Carmen has also become more quiet and has stopped trying to force people to talk to her or be close to her. The next morning, I found a small package outside my bedroom door. It had my mom's old charm bracelet in it. I remember that she wore it all the time when I was younger. In the message, my dad said that he had been saving it for my 18th birthday but thought I might need it right away. For the first time in a long time, I really felt like he understood how much I still miss my mum. Every day since then, I've worn a band. I feel like I have a little bit of my mum with me all the time. When Carmen saw it the other day, she asked what it was. I thought about telling her a lie for a second, but in the end, I chose to be honest. I was shocked that she didn't seem to mind or feel jealous. She did nothing but nod and say how beautiful it was. I'm glad that some of the stress has gone away, but I'm worried about what will happen to our family in the future. Things are still very tight at home. and I don't know what will happen next. Part of me hopes that this is the start of a new relationship and that they will finally understand and care about how I feel. But a part of me worries that this is just the calm before the storm. Notification 2 things at home have changed a lot since my last report 2 weeks ago. A few days after my grandparents stepped in to help. My dad told me he was sorry. It was clear to him that he had been unfair to my feelings and memories of my mother. And he admitted that he had been wrong to try to make Carmen and I become close. We talked for a long time by ourselves. For the first time in a long time, we really let each other in. He seemed to want me to move on from my mother, which hurt me. I told him that. He told Carmen that he felt guilty about being happy with her, because he thought it was disrespectful to his mother. Even though we both cried a lot, we felt like we finally got it. Regardless, there was a catch to this sorry. My dad told me that Carmen was pregnant again. They just found out the news, after trying for a while to have a child. My dad said that he hoped we could all get together as a family with this new child. The news made me feel mixed. On the one hand, I was glad that my dad had finally understood how I felt. But the idea of having a second-half sibling made me feel even more alone in my own family. Because Carmen is pregnant, things have changed in our home. She hasn't been able to focus on trying to connect with me because she's been very sick in the morning. It has helped me in some ways, but I feel bad about how I feel. Ronald has been following me around and asking me why I don't call Carmen Mom. He is also excited about becoming a big brother. For some reason, it's been hard to explain the situation to a 7-year-old without making him think that our family is less real. In the afternoon, Ronald and I looked through some old picture albums together. After seeing a picture of my mom, he asked about her. He was really confused when I told him she was my mother. He asked me if that meant Carmen wasn't my real mother. I tried to tell him about stepmothers and half-siblings, but I could tell it was too much for him to understand. My grandparents have always been there for me and helped me a lot. These people have been in touch with me a lot to see how I'm doing. They've even offered to let me stay with them over the summer if things get too stressful at home. There have also been more stories told about my mother, which have been both comforting and sad. The news of the pregnancy has also made me think a lot about my own mother. As I look through old picture albums, I've been remembering things about her that I almost forgot. It's fun to remember these times with her, but it also makes me miss her more. It's a mixed feeling. Carmen seems to understand this now because she is giving me more space. Without any fuss, she even gave me a box of my mom's old things that she had found in the attic. It was probably the nicest thing she's ever done for me, and it made me wonder if we could really get along and live together happily ever after, even if our relationship as mother and daughter will never be what she wanted. There have been times when my dad has tried to get to know me better by myself. He seems to be listening for the first time in a long time after we've talked about my mom a few times. It's not perfect, but it's a start. We're going to have a baby soon, so I don't know what the future holds for our family yet. For now, though, I'm cautiously optimistic that we might be able to find a new balance that respects everyone's feelings and limits. Report 3: a lot has happened since my last report, which was about a month ago. Carmen is in the second stage of her pregnancy, and things are going well so far. The morning sickness is gone, which has made things a little calmer at home. Even so, more problems have come up. Last week, Carmen and my dad decided to find out what gender the baby is. Their little girl is a girl. When Carmen told me about it at dinner, she said, "I hope you'll be a great big sister to her, just like you are to Ronald." I know she meant well, but it made me feel a lot of horrible things. I couldn't help but think that this little girl and Carmen would become best friends, just like I had always wanted. This made me feel even more like an alien. My dad called me aside after dinner, so he must have seen how I reacted. And for the first time in a long time, I told him the truth when he asked me how I felt about things. I told him how confused and conflicted I felt about my place in our family, how much I still miss my mom, and how scared I was that I would be replaced. I was shocked when my dad listened. He told me that not even himself could ever replace my mother. He said again that he was sorry for trying to get Carmen and me to date, and he promised to be better in the future. When this was over, my dad, Carmen, Ronald, and I had a family meeting to talk about how we got along. Maybe it wasn't easy and there were tears, but I think it was important. Mostly Carmen and my dad shed tears. We made one of our new family rules. Carmela said she would stop trying to turn us into a mother-daughter pair. Instead, we want to become friends based on mutual respect. 2. My dad decided to spend more one-on-one time with Ronald and me so that we would feel loved. 3. It's going to be Remember Mom Day every month. We're going to look at pictures of my mom and talk about those days. I was shocked when Carmen said that. While I promised to attend more family events, I also knew I could back out if I felt like I had too much to do. It's not a perfect answer, and I'm sure there will be more problems in the future, especially now that there is a baby. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like my feelings are being understood and respected. The day after our family get-together, Carmen came up to me and told me her idea. She suggested that when my mom gets older, we should work together to make a memory book for her, which we could then give to Ronald and the baby. At first I was nervous because it seemed like such a personal project. As we talked more about it though, I thought it might be a good way for me to remember my mom as our family grows and for Carmen to learn more about her. Once a week, we are now putting some work into it. Carmen and I talk about our past and present, and she asks me about my mother. It has been nice to talk to a stranger about my mother. Carmen has genuinely cared about me, and she has even helped me remember some things I had forgotten. Ronald comes over every once in a while and asks about his grandmother, whom he has never met. It's sweet and sad to see him get to know my mom through our stories. But it also seems right. I want him to know about her and understand how important she is to me all these years later. When it comes to the new baby, I'm still getting over how much she changed my life. In some ways, being a big sister again makes me happy, but in other ways, I'm worried about how it might change the way our family works. Carmen hasn't pushed me too hard to get involved with the baby stuff, which I like. I still want to spend time with my grandparents this summer because everyone told me it would be good for me. But now that it's over, I don't fear going home. My grandparents are even talking about coming to see us more often after the baby is born, which I think will be good for everyone. Last weekend, my dad and I went hiking by ourselves. It's been years since the last time we did this. When I was younger, we did it all the time. At the top of the path, where we were stopping to enjoy the view, Dad turned to face me. He also said, "Your mom would be so proud of the young woman you've become. That meant so much to me that I can't even put it into words." I'm cautiously optimistic about the future of our mixed family, even though I know we still have a long way to go. Perhaps we can find a way to solve the problem that works for everyone, even if it's not what Carmen wanted or what my dad first tried to force on us. I'm sure we'll still have problems and things won't be perfect. But I feel like for the first time in a long time, we're all trying to accept and understand their feelings. I don't think I'll ever be ready to call Carmen my mom. We might, however, build a friendship that is important in and of itself over time. It's also possible that this new baby will bring us all closer together.